I had just watched my daughter's face fall when her grandparents didn't show up to her recital. Again, Sophie stood on that stage in her pink tutu, 6 years old, and searching the audience for the two people who'd promised they'd be there. The two people I was paying $3,800 a month to keep comfortable in their retirement community. The two people who, apparently, had something better to do. My phone buzzed in my lap. A text from my mother. "So sorry, sweetie. Derek's boy had a championship game today. You understand. We'll catch Sophie's next one." I stared at the message, that familiar knot forming in my chest. The same knot that had been there since childhood, since I was 8 years old and my parents missed my school play because Derek had a soccer tournament. Since I was 16 and they forgot my birthday because Derek was applying to colleges. Since I was 23 and they left my nursing school graduation early because Derek's startup was pitching to investors. That startup failed, by the way, like the 3 after it. But I was the one who became a pediatric nurse, worked my way up to charge nurse, bought a house, married a wonderful man, and gave them their only granddaughter. None of that seemed to matter as much as Derek's latest venture or his son's latest baseball game. "Mama, did Grandma and Grandpa see me?" Sophie asked in the car, still in her recital costume, holding the bouquet of flowers her father and I had brought. "They couldn't make it, baby," I said, watching her in the rearview mirror. "But Daddy and I saw you, and you were perfect." "Mason had a game," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. She was 7 years younger than her cousin, but she already knew the hierarchy. That night, after Sophie was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with my husband, James. He'd been patient through years of this, watching my parents prioritize my brother and his family while taking my financial support for granted. "You need to say something," James said gently. "This isn't just about you anymore." Sophie notices. He was right. I'd been swallowing this for 32 years, telling myself that parents show love differently, that I was being sensitive, that I should be grateful they were still in my life. But watching my daughter learn that she was an afterthought, that was a line. I pulled up my bank account on my laptop. The payment to Meadowbrook Senior Living had gone through 3 days ago, like clockwork. $3,800 for a 2-bedroom apartment in a community with a gym, swimming pool, daily activities, and restaurant-style dining. I'd been making that payment for 3 years, ever since my father's retirement fund turned out to be less substantial than he'd planned. "We can't let them lose their home," my mother had said when they first came to me. Not to Derek, to me. Derek's still getting his business off the ground. Derek had been getting his business off the ground for 12 years at that point. But I was the responsible one, the one with the stable job and the savings account. So I'd said yes. Then there was the emergency credit card. I'd given them one of mine for unexpected expenses only. Medical copays, car repairs, that sort of thing. I checked the balance monthly, but I'll admit, I didn't scrutinize every charge. I trusted them. Maybe that was my first mistake. I clicked over to the credit card statement. The current balance was $2,847. That seemed high. I started scrolling through the charges. Toys R Us, $147. Dick's Sporting Goods, $312. iTunes gift cards, $100. Another Toys R Us charge, $89. A children's clothing store, $156. My heart started pounding. I went back further. Last month's statement, Amazon, Mason's birthday gift, $245. Party City, $187. More sporting goods, $267. I went back 6 months. Every month, hundreds of dollars in charges that had nothing to do with my parents' emergencies. These were gifts. For Mason. For my brother's son. "James," I said, my voice shaking, "look at this." He came around the table and leaned over my shoulder. We scrolled in silence for 5 minutes. "That's over $8,000, he finally said. In 6 months. I felt like I'd been punched. All this time, while I was being told we couldn't afford to take Sophie to Disney World this year because of the payments I was making to my parents, they were spending my money on my nephew. While I was packing my daughter's lunch every day and clipping coupons, my parents were buying my brother's kid a new baseball glove, video games, a bicycle. The fury came fast and hot. I grabbed my phone and called my mother. Rachel, honey, we felt so bad about missing Sophie's recital. We're going to make it up to her, I promise. How? I asked, my voice colder than I intended. By buying her a toy with my own credit card? Silence. What are you talking about? She asked, but her voice had that careful quality I knew well. Mom, I'm looking at my credit card statement right now. The emergency card I gave you. Want to guess what I'm seeing? More silence. Those weren't emergencies, she said finally. But Derek's been struggling, and Mason deserves to have nice things like the other kids. You have a good job, Rachel. You can afford to help. I actually laughed. I can afford to help? I'm paying for your entire living situation, Mom. Almost $4,000 a month. And you've spent $8,000 of my money in 6 months on gifts for Derek's kid while ignoring mine? That's not fair, she said, and I could hear her getting defensive. We don't ignore Sophie. We love her. But Mason is going through a hard time with Derek's business situation, and we wanted to make sure he didn't feel the stress. Sophie is 6 years old, and she stood on a stage today looking for you. She knows you don't show up for her. She knows Mason comes first, and now I know I'm the one funding it. You're being dramatic, my mother said. This is what family does. We help each other. You're right, I said, and I'm done helping people who don't appreciate it. I hung up. James was looking at me with something like pride. What are you going to do? I'm going to check exactly how much they've stolen from me. Then I'm going to handle it. I spent the next 2 hours going through every statement from the past 3 years. The emergency card had been active for that long. The first year, the charges were legitimate. Doctor visits, prescriptions, a new water heater for their apartment. But somewhere in year 2, it started to shift. Toys, gift cards, sporting equipment, children's clothes in sizes my daughter didn't wear. Total, 23, $23,000 of my money spent on my nephew while my daughter was told we couldn't afford gymnastics classes this year. I took screenshots of everything. Then I called my brother. Hey, Rach, Derek answered, sounding distracted. What's up? Did you know Mom and Dad have been buying Mason gifts with my credit card? Pause. What? No, they wouldn't. $23,000 worth, Derek. Over 2 years. I heard him exhale. I didn't know it was your card. Mom said she wanted to spoil her grandson. I thought it was from their own money. They don't have their own money. I'm paying for everything. Their apartment, their food, their life. And they've been using my emergency card to make sure Mason doesn't feel the stress of your failed businesses. That's not fair, he said, his voice hardening. I'm trying to build something. For 12 years, Derek. You've been trying for 12 years. In the meantime, I've been taking care of Mom and Dad while they take care of you. When does it end? You make good money, he said. You always have. Some of us aren't as lucky. Luck? I almost shouted. I worked my ass off through nursing school. I worked night shifts and double shifts and holidays. I saved money and built a career, while you bounced from idea to idea waiting for something to stick. That's not luck. That's choices. Whatever, Rachel. If you want to cut off your own parents because you're jealous that Mason gets some attention, that's on you. I hung up on him too. The next morning, I called Meadowbrook Senior Living. I explained that I needed to give 60 days notice to end the lease. The woman on the phone was sympathetic but professional. My parents would need to find new arrangements by the end of the following month. Then I called my credit card company and canceled the card I'd given my parents. They wouldn't be able to use it again. Finally, I sent my parents an email. I knew if I called, my mother would talk over me or cry or find some way to make me feel guilty. I needed to say this clearly. Mom and Dad, I've discovered that the emergency credit card I gave you has been used to purchase $23,691 in gifts for Mason over the past 2 years. This was not the agreement we had. I've also realized that my financial support has enabled you to prioritize Derek and his family while taking mine for granted. You missed Sophie's recital yesterday for Mason's baseball game. This is a pattern that has existed my entire life. I've given notice on your apartment at Meadowbrook. You have 60 days to find alternative housing. I've also canceled the credit card. I love you both, but I will not continue to fund a lifestyle that allows you to ignore my daughter while spoiling my nephew with my own money. If you can afford to spend $23,000 on gifts, you can afford to contribute to your own living expenses. Rachel. I didn't expect what happened next. My mother called 17 times in 3 hours. I didn't answer. Then my father called. Then Derek. Then my mother texted that she was having heart palpitations and I was going to give her a heart attack. That almost worked. I almost called back. But James put his hand on my shoulder and said, if she's having a medical emergency, she should call 911, not emotionally manipulate you. He was right. By evening, Derek showed up at my house. I watched through the window as he rang the doorbell repeatedly. James answered while I stayed in the kitchen. She needs to talk to Mom and Dad, I heard Derek say. She's being unreasonable. She's being reasonable for the first time in her life, James replied. You all have taken advantage of her kindness for years. It's done. They're going to lose their apartment. Then maybe you should help them, Derek. Or maybe they should find something they can actually afford. I can't afford to help them. My business. Your business has been failing for over a decade. Rachel is not responsible for cleaning up everyone's mess. Derek left. I sat at my kitchen table shaking. Over the next week, the calls and texts continued. My mother sent me pictures of Mason, saying I was punishing an innocent child. Derek sent me screenshots of my parents crying, saying I was abandoning family. Even my aunt called to tell me I was being cruel. But something interesting happened. Sophie started smiling more. We signed her up for the gymnastics class she'd wanted. We started planning that Disney trip. And when I asked her if she missed seeing Grandma and Grandpa, she thought about it carefully and said, not really. They made me feel sad. That broke my heart and confirmed everything. The 60 days passed. I later learned through my aunt that my parents had moved to a much smaller apartment in a regular complex, not a senior community. Derek had to contribute $400 a month. They downsized significantly, selling furniture and decorations they couldn't fit. My mother sent me one final text. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed this family. I didn't respond, but I thought about it a lot. Had I destroyed the family? Or had I simply stopped participating in a dynamic that was destroying me? 3 months later, Sophie had her birthday party, a small thing at a local park with her school friends. My parents weren't invited. Derek and his family weren't there. It was just Sophie, her friends, James's family, and my close friends. Sophie was radiant. She didn't ask about grandparents who weren't there. She didn't compare herself to Mason. She just enjoyed being celebrated. As I watched her blow out her candles, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you've protected your child from the same wounds you carried. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Mason got all A's on his report card. Thought you'd want to know your nephew is doing well, despite everything. I deleted it without responding. James found me later, cleaning up wrapping paper. You okay? I'm better than okay, I said. And I meant it. I spent 32 years trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I spent $23,000 on people who never even sent Sophie a birthday card. And I was so afraid of being the bad daughter that I almost taught my own daughter she wasn't worth standing up for. And now I know better. I'm not the bad daughter for having boundaries. I'm not selfish for protecting my kid. I'm not cruel for refusing to fund my own disrespect. He hugged me, and I let myself lean into it. 6 months after I cut off support, my father called. Not my mother, my father. Rachel, he said quietly. Can we talk? I almost said no, but something in his voice stopped me. I'm listening, I said. Your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking and fighting, to be honest. Living in this new place, having to budget, having to ask Derek for help. It's been hard, but it's also been eye-opening. I didn't say anything. I see now what we did, he continued. Derek was always the one who needed help, so we helped him. You were always the strong one, so we leaned on you. We took your strength for granted, and we took you for granted. My throat tightened. I'm not asking you to forgive us, he said. I'm not asking you to start paying our bills again. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what we did to you. I see what we did to Sophie, and I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. Dad, I appreciate that. I really do. But I need you to understand something. I didn't cut you off to punish you. I cut you off to protect my daughter. She deserves grandparents who show up for her, not grandparents who see her as an afterthought while spending my money on her cousin. I know, he said. You were right to do it. Your mother doesn't fully agree, but I do. You were right. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing, he said. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, and that if you ever want to let us try again, to be real grandparents to Sophie, we'd like that chance. But only when you're ready. Only if you want to. We talked for a few more minutes. He told me about their new apartment, about how Derek had to step up, about how they'd started budgeting for the first time in years. He didn't ask for money. He didn't make excuses. He just talked. When I hung up, I sat with it. Was I ready to let them back in? I didn't know. Maybe someday. But it would be on my terms, with boundaries, and only if they could treat Sophie the way she deserved to be treated. For now, though, I was content with the family I'd chosen to prioritize. My husband, who'd supported me through all of it. My daughter, who was learning that she was worth standing up for. And myself, who'd finally learned that saying no to being used wasn't selfish. It was survival. That night, I tucked Sophie into bed, and she asked me something she hadn't asked in months. Mama, do you think Grandma and Grandpa love me? I thought carefully about my answer. I think they do, baby. I think they just forgot how to show it. But you know what? You have so many people who show you every single day. Daddy, me, your aunts and uncles on Daddy's side, your teachers, your friends. You are so loved, Sophie. So incredibly loved. She smiled and hugged her stuffed rabbit. I know, I can feel it. As I turned off her light and closed her door, I realized something. I'd spent my whole life trying to feel that, trying to earn it from my parents. Trying to be good enough, successful enough, generous enough to deserve their attention. But Sophie already knew she was loved, because I made sure of it, every single day. And that, more than anything else, told me I'd made the right choice. The money I used to spend on my parents' luxury apartment now goes into Sophie's college fund. The energy I used to spend managing their expectations now goes into being present for my daughter. The emotional space I used to reserve for hoping they'd change now belongs to people who've already proven they value me. I don't hate my parents. I don't even regret helping them for as long as I did. But I don't regret stopping. Either. Because at the end of the day, I didn't fail them by setting boundaries. They failed me by making boundaries necessary. And I succeeded by choosing to break the cycle before it broke my daughter. That's the story I'll tell her someday, when she's old enough to understand, not as a cautionary tale about trust, but as a lesson about self-worth, about knowing when generosity becomes self-destruction, about understanding that you can love people and still refuse to let them hurt you. I was 32 when I finally learned that lesson. But Sophie will know it from the beginning, and that makes every difficult conversation, every guilt trip, every accusation of being selfish worth it, because she'll never have to learn the hard way that she's worth standing up for. She'll already know.